Good Wednesday. It is October 10th. We're giving you an update here on Hurricane Michael. And since we last spoke yesterday, there's been a lot of changes, most notably the intensity of the storm. We are up to a mid to high level Category 4 powerhouse. Before we get to that, just a quick reminder of where we stand within the 6-month hurricane season. Of course, we had our peak on September 10th. Things kind of got a little quiet for a couple of weeks. And then notice climatologically, we are right around a secondary peak after the main peak in September. Of course, it goes until November 30th. Of course, we could see other storms developing, but out there right now, very active. We have 3 named systems all out there right now coexisting. All right, we have 13 named storms right now. Actually, Nadine was our 14th. That is a tropical storm currently. Michael, as I mentioned, has a Category 4, our second major hurricane of the year. Of course, before that was Florence. Thankfully, it weakened before landfall. But as you know, even though it was a Category 1, it surely brought a lot of issues. Here is how Michael looks on radar imagery. We're picking it up now on a Tallahassee radar, just south of Panama City. Right now, about 60 miles or so, that eye wall, that eye center off the coastline there. Now, technically, you look at this and say, well, the storm has already made landfall, right? No, not really. It's not defined. Landfall is defined as the entire eye moving up and over land, or the center of circulation if there is no defined eye. So we still got several more hours until technically landfall has occurred, likely early afternoon here on your Wednesday. Of course, banding already happening here. You see the bands of dark greens and yellow indicating some gusty winds and, of course, very heavy rain. This watch box here in the purple is a tornado watch because tropical systems, we saw this with Florence as well, already initiate spin in the atmosphere, so it's a lot easier for these storms to develop rotation and touch down a brief tornado. Typically, they're on the weaker side, but still, nonetheless, any tornado is dangerous. We put it in motion here over the last 3 hours, and you notice it is slowly drifting off towards the north. Right now, I think the forward speed is only like 12 miles per hour off towards the north, heading pretty much right at Panama City to make landfall there later this afternoon. And of course, there's the eye wall defined there. We have outer eye wall bands and just pulling a lot of wind and water up and over the coastline. In fact, let's put on some wind speeds here. Some recent wind gusts. Notice Apalachicola clocking a recent wind gust of up and over 50 miles per hour, and it's only going to get stronger from here on out. Here's how it looks on satellite imagery. A very impressive presentation. Look at that eye, very clearly defined, in fact, expanding in size a little bit as it edges closer and closer to the coastline. There's the latest information on it. We are on hourly advisories now from the National Hurricane Center. That was initiated at 5 o'clock this morning as it nears landfall. 145 mile per hour winds, gusts up to 165. Look at the central pressure, 931 millibars. You look at that and you say, what in the world does that even mean? Well, for comparison, yesterday at this time, that was up in the 960 range. So it has deepened dramatically. And that is the central pressure of the center of circulation there. And that gives us a gauge of the intensity of the storm. Now, you may have heard the words rapid intensification thrown around over the last couple of days. Well, the National Hurricane Center defines rapid intensification as an increase in the maximum sustained winds of a tropical cyclone of at least 30 knots or 35 miles per hour in a 24-hour period. I will tell you this, Michael has certainly achieved rapid intensification. Here's the example. 7 o'clock advisory or 8 o'clock Eastern time advisory yesterday had sustained winds of 100 miles per hour, central pressure of 968, okay? This morning at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock Central Standard Time, we saw winds of 145 miles per hour. So obviously surpassed the 35 mile per hour increase in 24 hours. We increased it by 45 miles per hour. And look at that drop in central pressure, 933, a 34 millibar drop in, or 35 millibar drop in the last 24 hours. And it continues to deepen. Recon is out there in the storm. There's actually extrapolated pressure showing that it may even be sub 930 millibars now, with it only 50 miles off the coastline. So it is a Category 4 storm. Here's the latest updated track. No real changes to this over the last, 24 hours. It's pretty much been dead on consistent over the last 24 to even 36 hours. Expected to make landfall at this intensity, maybe a tad bit stronger as it's moving over some very warm, although shallow waters right now. 1 p.m. around that time should be a landfall 145 miles per hour. Something to drop on you here, a statistic. There has been 0 Category 4, Category 5 hurricanes on record since 1851 that have made landfall in the Florida Panhandle. Okay? Now, you may say, well, Opal was a Category 4, so was Dennis back in 2005. True, they were Category 4s at a point in time within their existence, but they did not make landfall as Category 4 storms. They both weakened to Category 3. So if this maintains a Category 4 status, it'll be the first in recorded history that has occurred. I've had a lot of people asking me on social media, how does it go from a Category 4 hurricane to less than 12 hours later to a Category 1? A good way to think of this is look at a hurricane as an engine and the warm ocean waters as fuel. As it moves away from its fuel source, away from the open, warm ocean waters and moves inland, it's cut off and that engine begins to putter out. So it weakens down to a Category 1. It gets swept up by an incoming cold front. Its forward speed drastically increases. Look at the ground it covers from Thursday 2 a.m. to just 24 hours later. It's pretty much off the eastern seaboard, off the Virginia coastline. Increases its forward speed thanks to that cold front. That's a good thing because that means it will not be lingering or prolonged event for the eastern seaboard, which is good news considering Florence was pretty much the opposite and hung around for days and days. So in terms of the Saffir-Simpson scale, how we gauge the strength of hurricanes based on their wind speed, Category 4 hurricane firmly right in the middle of that mid to high grade Category 4 system. To achieve Category 5 status, pretty hard to do. It's got to be up and over 157 miles per hour. Sustained winds. Okay, so not likely going to get that strong, but nonetheless, at this point in time, it's just semantics. It's going to be a beast, a powerhouse of a storm. So the latest information here, the only potential I see before landfall of this weakening, besides landfall weakening itself, would be something called an eye wall replacement cycle. And when that occurs, it typically happens in intense cyclones like this, is that the eye wall builds in those thunderstorms so intensely that they almost contract inwards and briefly try to suffocate the system. That leads to a brief drop in intensity, but then it clears out and makes room for another much times larger eye wall. So if that was to happen, it'd pretty much have to happen right now. But that time is running out for it to weaken the storm at all. It's got plenty of fuel with those warm ocean waters there and likely maintain Category 4 as it makes landfall. Now, life-threatening storm surge already underway. Those winds are piling up across the coastline everywhere east of that storm center. Those winds are coming onshore. And once the storm is inland, that forward speed will increase, as you saw there on the forecast track, with the cold front pushing it off towards the north-northeast rather quickly. And we're talking catastrophic impacts here for the Florida Panhandle. Again, if it is a Category 4 storm, this has not happened before. Here's the watches and warnings. Your time to prepare in this area is long gone, okay? It is imminent and occurring as we speak. Hurricane warnings are up there, even farther inland, as it's going to maintain its structure and its wind field for quite a while. We have tropical storm warnings well far inland in the orange through much of the state of South Carolina and Georgia, and then tropical storm watches out a little bit farther to the north there. That's indicating that the possibility is there within 48 hours. Here, it's much closer in time frame, like 36 hours. So current states of emergency across the area, Alabama and Florida, the entire states there are under a declaration of emergency. Meanwhile, in Georgia, 92 counties were declared states of emergency to open up state and federal funding to assist with whatever Michael does bring in the next 12 to 24 hours. Let's talk about that storm surge potential now, because this is not looking good. 9 to 13 foot storm surge in areas just to the east of the Big Bend area, closer to that storm center. You're talking 6 to 9, pretty much the entire Florida coastline from the Mobile area all the way down to Tampa is going to see some sort of storm surge. The closer you are to the center, the greater that storm surge will be. Now, you may ask yourself, well, why is it so much stronger? Why is the storm surge so much larger, 9 to 13 feet on the eastern side of the storm? Well, that's because the winds are coming in off the water there. Let's briefly talk about the hurricane quadrants and where you're going to find the strongest winds. The northeast quadrant, or the front right, will always have the maximum hurricane impact in terms of the storm surge and the maximum winds. Why? Well, you got to factor in the storm direction, the storm forward movement. Say the storm, like let's use Michael right now. It's moving to the north at around 12 miles per hour. Say the maximum sustained winds are like 140 miles per hour. You take 140, you add in that forward momentum, you're getting winds now well over 150 miles per hour. Okay, so you're going to find the strongest winds in the northeast quadrant. Front left still bringing significant winds, and that's why even on the western side of the storm, you saw in the storm surge potential, still going to get get some significant numbers there, blowing that water up and over the coastlines there. And then off to the back right, still significant wind. Really, I mean, in any quadrant of a hurricane, you're going to have strong winds. It's just in which direction they're blowing that's going to bring the most impacts. And the back left is categorized as the weakest, but as I just mentioned, part of a hurricane, still pretty dangerous there. So those are the quadrants. Let's talk winds now. Here's a forecast model, the European, showing wind speeds at landfall, Panama City, 130 miles per hour. Now, doesn't mean this is exactly going to happen, but that's the potential based on its current trajectory and its current strength. 130 mile per hour winds. As it moves inland, we start to see that wind field go a little bit farther inland areas. Dothan around 65 miles per hour, 68 out in Tallahassee. And look at this. Here we are at 6:15 tonight, several hours after landfall. Still gusts in Panama City over 100 miles per hour. It pushes inland. Look at Dothan, 119 mile per hour wind gusts, 85 miles per hour up towards Albany. And as it moves north and farther inland, that wind field as well as the rain moisture field will begin to expand as well. Here's how it looks on the Futurecast model. We're going to use the European again. Notice the heavy rain, the wind as a bullseye here, powerhouse moving on into the Panama City area. It moves inland, covers a lot of ground rather quickly, sails through Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. Notice here the heavy rain in areas that do not need it. Florence, still recovering from that just under 3 weeks ago. Thankfully, it will be a fast mover this time around. And then the heavy rain moves its way towards Hampton Roads, Virginia Beach area, northeastern North Carolina. And at this point in time, you notice how the center is kind of elongated a little bit more. That's the interaction with the cold front coming in from the west. And that'll help spread out its wind field a little bit more, as well as the heavier rain as it quickly pulls out to sea. Winds shift out of the northwest. And I tell you, if you've been waiting for autumn weather, it is coming behind Michael. We're going to see dew points drop as well as air temperature. So this weekend will be nice. It's just we got to get through the next couple of days until Michael clears the area. Rainfall totals. Here's the European. Again, the heaviest bands is going to be in that brighter whites and purples you're seeing there. 5 to maybe 10, even 15 inches, depending on where you're located. And then there's the GFS rendition, taking it a little bit farther off towards the north and west, especially with the banding up to the north through Virginia, keeping the heaviest out through central Virginia. Now, we also got to talk about that severe threat. You saw that there was that tornado watch box up for the area right now in Florida as it makes landfall. Well, that severe threat will continue and expand into Georgia and parts of South Carolina today, and then that moves off towards the north as we get into tomorrow, including the Wilmington area, much of coastal North Carolina and South Carolina. That puts it at a slight risk, a 2 out of 5 in terms of the tier system here, but nonetheless, there'll probably be some spin-up tornadoes and some tornado watches issued. Outside of Michael, we have 2 other systems out there. Leslie, you remember that one's been around for nearly a month. It's back up to a hurricane. Nadine is a tropical storm. Here's a little tidbit for you here. Latest in the calendar year that the Atlantic has had 3 storms simultaneously since 1950. So 3 named storms out there in October. That's pretty historic and interesting. All right, that's all we got for you there today. We'll talk more about what's going on with Michael as we get into the day tomorrow, post-landfall, and as sails up to Georgia and into the Carolinas. If you want to find me on social media, have a question or anything like that, Facebook, meteorologist Tim Pandajis. Just started a new Instagram, Tim Pandajis TV, and Twitter, 13 Tim Pandajis. Enjoy your afternoon, but please stay safe if you're in this area. And we'll have another update later on this evening and tomorrow.